Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and today we're coming back with another keyboard video, and this time we have to thank Luminkey. Luminkey sent me out their newest 98 V2. Now, I've personally tried the V1. I've actually loved it and enjoyed it. There was certain cons that I remember from it, but I actually don't have one anymore, but we'll still have a little bit of comparisons in this video. I'm really curious what they've upgraded, see what it's like, and of course do a bunch of sound tests. So let's go straight into the unboxing. Please make sure to like and subscribe.
So introducing the Luminkey98 V2. I was actually quite excited to try this one out because I did actually really enjoy the original V1. It was a very interesting board, especially when you're coming from a more budget keyboard and start moving up a little bit into something that's a little bit nicer overall. Now, as you can see here, the box is quite nice. They did a great job with the packaging, which I believe Luminkey does in general overall, and they really put a lot of thought into what they're doing. Now, one thing I did notice is that you don't get the carrying case anymore. Now, you do get some other cool stuff. You get a combination keycap puller and switch puller. You also get a nice braided cable. You also get some extra parts inside in a little bag, which is going to be your USB dongle, as well as an extra switch. Only single switch though, which is kind of unfortunate. I would have hoped that it would have been more than one. Now you do get a screwdriver for making the changes, and you get extra screws as well as an extra gasket mount. Now they do have the manual inside there and a little envelope, which really does make a little bit more of a premium feel to it. And overall, I would have to say they did a great job with the packaging. Now, they do wrap their keyboards in plastic. That's something that I've noticed with, previous Luminkey keyboards. And this one is the exact same like that. So one of the things that I feel like kind of ruins a little bit of like the premium unboxing experience. That's just me. It's just I feel like they could have done something a little bit different. Maybe just wrap it with a nice microfiber cloth, something big enough to cover the board, would have been actually a little bit nicer than just plain plastic. That's just my personal thoughts, and of course everyone might think something different, but overall the whole board itself was very well done. The little line over there, I thought maybe I cracked the board, but no, that's just part of the design, and you will see it later when we're doing the lighting tests. Now, before we go into sound test, let's weigh the board, and it weighs 2.1 kilograms. So first thing we're going to do is do a teardown of the board. Now, one thing you'll already notice is that the numpad 0, when I was pulling it up with the switch itself, is actually coming up a little bit, which is honestly not the greatest. And yeah, it's something that I do wish they looked more into when they are releasing the board, just to make sure that it doesn't really stick. But to be fair, it is with the plate mount stabilizers, which might be doing that reason. Now, there is a total of 6 screws that need to be taken out, and they're actually hidden screws, if you notice. Very, very cool that they did that with this new board. So compared to the version 1, this one has hidden screws, and there's 2 for the numpad and 4 for the board in total. So right away, we did all the screws, and now we're going to be taking it out and seeing what is inside. So you can see there's going to be a bunch of foam underneath the PCB, and it's actually really good foam. They did a great job with this, and I would say that it's really interesting. Now, it is plate mounted stabilizers, so that's something we're going to be dealing with, and you actually have a decent amount of lube inside. Not amazing, but not too bad as well. So let's take a look to see the actual plate as well as PCB, just to see is it flex cut. Now, one thing you'll notice here is the plate and the PCB are both not flex cut, which is actually quite impressive. I'm very, very glad to see that with what they're doing, which makes me really feel like this board possibly could sound better without foam. We'll have to see at the end of it, but it is a 1.5mm plate and a 1.6mm PCB. This also supports screw in or clip-in stabilizers, which is really cool. And it is gasket mounted, so it's not going to be the top mount like it used to be, and it will have changed in terms of that. Now, one thing I want to look at inside. So you can actually change the numpad position just like the V1. So the V1 specialty was the fact that you can actually move it around. But there is a big change. You'll see here that there's actually a kind of a change between the actual numpad position. So there's this little plate there that you will have to move to know and position the numpad. So it's supposed to keep the numpad in and not move around, which is, I guess, a good thing. I can't remember if I had any issues with that with the V1, but I don't think I did. Now there is a little bit of a caveat that I noticed, is that moving the numpad position and the actual board around is a little bit more difficult than the original V1. So the V1, you don't really have to do much. They actually did a really great job in terms of making it very easy to move it around. The V2, on the other hand, you actually have to remove the mounting for the screws around so that it is positioned perfectly so that the numpad and the keyboard can actually fit in, as you guys would have saw. So you'll see I am actually moving the mounting position of the screws so that it can actually work for the board, and I have to measure it just carefully with the case itself, the top case, just to see if it is working correctly. So these are things that I definitely feel like has become harder compared to the V1, which I don't know. I really love to hear what you guys think in terms of that. Now, one reason I didn't do a lubed version versus like the stock version of the sound test is because the switch is actually decently lubed. So I didn't actually do anything because I didn't think it would make a change if I lubed them. Now going into the modding portion. So I'm actually going to be doing a 2-layer tape mod on this just to see and make sure it sounds different or not. So we're going to do 2 layers. I'm just going to be careful of the specific positions of the magnet. So as you guys would have saw, there is a magnetic prong that connects both the numpad and the keyboard together, and there's like a cable that's in the bottom case which can be moved around, which is kind of cool. And I do like the fact that it is magnetic prong instead of maybe just a ribbon cable. Now, one thing I'm going to be doing different in terms of this video is going to be actually giving you guys like a foamless sound test plus a case foam removed sound test and a modded sound test with the stock sound, so you guys can hear like all the different versions, and hopefully that way you guys can get an idea what this board is like. And that is my goal for this. So one thing I did notice though while I was putting this in with the tape mods is it is a little bit tight, so you're going to have to be careful with it for yourselves when you are putting it together and doing a tape mod if you want to make a little bit more of a thocky sound. Now doing the decibel test, you can see here how loud the board is actually, because, you know, when I do my sound test, I want to make sure that you guys can really hear everything. So there's going to be a bit of those differences when you are hearing a sound test compared to what it actually might sound like in terms of real life. So as you can see here, this is going to be around the 60 decibel point on average. So it's not going to be the loudest board, but it's not going to be super quiet either. You're still looking at around a decent decibel range where like people talking around you, maybe like 2 or 3 people. Now in terms of the degree of the typing angle, it is a 7-degree typing angle, so keep in mind. And that's not too bad. Honestly, I felt pretty comfortable using this board in terms of typing, and overall it was very nice. Now as you can see here, it is a very nicely angled board, and you can even see in the front it has a very decent height. It's not too tall, and it actually feels quite nice to use. Now, you do have the movable numpad, a USB port in the middle, and really nice designed back with like a white, which is really cool. I would say the cons of this board is the fact that some of the switches can be pulled off with the keycaps and like pull the PCB as well, which is not great. It does have a magnetic prong, which is nice, which can be moved around. It does have a bit of a difficulty in terms of moving the numpad and keyboard over, so just keep in mind that. The gasket mounting does sound quite nice with the switches. It does make a nice thocky sound, and overall the backlighting of this board is quite nice as well. I'd say it's very bright, but overall it does have a little bit of a color change in terms of the switch. Now the pricing of this board is 268 USD. It is going to be on a little bit of the higher side, but when you're getting this kind of quality, it really does make sense for this price. Like, you are getting a very nice high quality keyboard, and yes, it's not going to be like a custom board which has a foamless sound available, but I think if they do provide plates in the future, this could really come out to be a nice board, especially if we change it out to like a FR4 plate. Foamless could possibly work, especially if you change it to a screw in or clip in stabilizer. Now, in terms of the differences between the V1 and the V2, so as you can see here, the biggest changes is going to be the PCB. So it has the ability to do 8K now with the new board, and it has the gasket mounting and fast charging, which is very cool. And you'll see here with the whole split up of the board, really does come with many different foams and is a very well done keyboard. Now the switches itself, I think, is not bad. It's not the greatest, but it's not too bad. Now it is OEM profile keycaps, so just keep in mind that. I'm not a big fan of OEM, but with these, they actually worked really well. And as you can see here, it has a 6,000 mAh battery, and overall the battery life is actually quite decent, and you actually can charge it very quickly because it does have fast charging. So some people might be very sad to hear this, but it is not going to be VIA based, and you are going to have to use Luminkey's web app. Now the web app is actually quite nice. It was really surprising because you actually get a SOCD snap tap and all these other options. Now, something to keep in note, guys, is that I got a prototype, so unfortunately there's few things that I wasn't able to really test myself. One of the things was the specific like advanced keys here, like the SOCD snap tap, and I couldn't test the AK polling or other things just because I have a prototype that wasn't working fully with everything. So just please keep in mind that when it comes to the final version, you should be getting something that works a lot better. Now, I do think that their software has improved very much, and it is very nice now. It's actually really easy to use and looks nice.
What do I think in terms of the V1 versus V2? I think that overall, the V2 is a very decent upgrade. I think overall build quality wise, very well done. I wish I did get the anodized version instead of like the spray coated version, just so I could remember and feel like what the difference might have been in that area. This board itself, there are, as I showed in like the video, there's a little bit of differences with like how difficult it is to make the changes. The original V1 was actually a lot easier to change from southpaw to regular. And overall, I think the switches and sound wise though, this is a little bit better. I would say the V2 has a better sound profile compared to the V1s, and overall they did a very great job. I think Luminkey just has very good quality keyboards, especially if you're looking from switching from just like the budgets and moving slowly towards the custom side, but not fully there yet, but want a little bit of a nicer board. Luminkey has some really cool stuff. I just wish they would use VIA. Like, it would be a much nicer thing if they do use VIA, but that's just my personal opinion. I know that they've been working on their software and it's just been improving over time. It'd just be nice to have a universal thing. Now, you guys can check it out yourselves. I'll have the links in the description. And of course, check out the other videos I got, and I'll have to catch you guys next time.